The year was 2157, and humanity had finally done it. After decades of watching the stars and listening for any sign of life out there, in the vast darkness of space, Marcus Chun stood in his apartment in Geneva, looking at the message that had arrived 3 days ago on every communication device on Earth simultaneously, and it was not from any human government or organization, but from something calling itself the Galactic Council. The message was simple and direct. Humanity was invited to make first contact at a designated location in space, beyond the orbit of Neptune and Earth, had 7 days to send representatives. Marcus was chosen to lead the delegation because of his work as a senior diplomat at the United Earth government, and he had negotiated peace treaties between nations and handled delicate situations. But nothing had prepared him for this moment in history. Shuttle-carrying Marcus and his team of 12 other humans approached the coordinates, and what they saw took their breath away, because floating in the darkness was a structure so massive it made Earth's largest space stations look like children's toys. It was a ring-shaped station that seemed to shimmer with energy fields and lights, and ships of dozens of different designs moved around it like insects around a hive. "This is UEG Shuttle Endeavour requesting permission to dock." Marcus spoke into the communication system, and his voice was steady despite the hammering of his heart. A reply came instantly in perfect English, though the voice sounded strange and artificial. "Permission granted, and welcome representatives of Earth to Council Station Prime." The docking process was smooth, and Marcus led his team through corridors that seemed designed for beings much larger than humans, until they reached a massive chamber that must have been a kilometer across. Inside were creatures that Marcus had only dreamed about in his wildest imagination, because there were beings that looked like insects the size of horses, and others that seemed to be made of liquid metal, and some that floated in containment fields filled with gas. At the center of the chamber sat a council table arranged in a semicircle, and 47 different species were represented there. A being that looked like a cross between a lizard and a tiger stood up, and its scales were deep purple, and its eyes were golden. "I am High Counselor Vexrath of the Venatari Empire, and I speak for the Galactic Council. And we welcome humanity to the greater galactic community." Marcus bowed respectfully. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we are honored to be here, and we come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge." Vexrath's expression did not change, and Marcus suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. "Your eagerness is noted, human, but you must understand that entrance into the galactic community comes with responsibilities and requirements." Another being spoke up, and this one looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. "Earth has been observed for the past 50 of your years, and we have monitored your technological development and your expansion into your solar system." Marcus nodded. "We have worked hard to establish colonies on Mars, and mining operations in the asteroid belt, and research stations on several moons." "Too hard," Vexrath said, and his voice was cold. "Your rate of advancement is abnormal and dangerous, and unregulated species with your aggressive tendencies have caused problems in the past." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Aggressive tendencies, and what do you mean by that?" The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Aggressive tendencies, and what do you mean by that?" Insectoid being clicked its mandibles. "You have had over 200 major wars in the past 1,000 years, and your planet is divided into competing nations, and your entertainment glorifies violence and conflict." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but forced himself to stay calm. "We have also created art and music and literature, and we have gone centuries without major conflicts in recent times, and we are united now under the United Earth Government." Vexrath raised a clawed hand. "These justifications are irrelevant, because the Council has made its decision, and Earth is classified as a Category 7 primitive world, and you have 2 options before you." The chamber fell silent, and Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. What options? Option 1. Earth submits to vassalage under the Venatari Empire, and you will dismantle your military forces and surrender control of all whole world colonies and accept Venatari oversight of your technological development and cultural evolution. Marcus stared in disbelief. You want us to become your subjects? We prefer the term protectorate, Vexrath said. You will be guided and protected and prevented from harming yourselves or others. And option 2, Marcus asked, though he already feared the answer. Option 2. Earth refuses Council authority and faces corrective sanctions, including blockade and possible military intervention, and your off-world colonies will be seized, and your advancement will be halted by force. The other human delegates behind Marcus began whispering urgently, but Marcus raised his hand for silence because his mind was racing through the implications. You are not offering us membership as equals, Marcus said. You are demanding our surrender. A being that looked like a crystalline tree spoke. Young species always struggle with this transition, but it is for your own good, and countless worlds have joined the council this way. Marcus looked around the chamber at the alien faces, and he saw no sympathy, there only certainty and arrogance. How long do we have to decide? You have already decided, Vexrath said. Your presence here and your acceptance of our invitation constitutes acknowledgement of council authority, and you will inform your government to begin the dismantling process. Immediately, something snapped inside Marcus, and he drew himself up to his full height. No. The word echoed in the massive chamber, and several aliens made sounds of surprise. No, Marcus repeated. We did not come here to surrender our freedom, and we came seeking equals, not masters. And if the Galactic Council cannot offer us a place as partners, then Earth respectfully declines your offer. Vexrath's eyes widened. You cannot refuse the Council, and no species has ever refused. Then we will be the first, Marcus said, and he turned to his delegation. We are leaving. As the humans walked toward the exit, several aliens called out warnings and threats, but Marcus did not look back because he knew that everything had changed in that moment when they reached their shuttle and began the journey back to Earth. Marcus activated the emergency communication system. This is Ambassador Chun to United Earth Government, and first contact has occurred, and we are at war. The other delegates stared at him in shock, but Marcus was already thinking ahead. Because Earth had just made the most dangerous decision in human history behind them on Council Station. Prime Vexrath watched the human shuttle depart, and he turned to his fellow counselors. Mobilize the Venatari fleet, and these primitives will learn that defiance of the Council is futile. But High Counselor, Vexrath had never encountered a species quite like humanity before, and he had no idea what he had just unleashed. 3 weeks after Ambassador Chun's return to Earth, the Venatari fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system, and it consisted of 37 warships, each one larger than any vessel humanity had ever constructed. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the UEG destroyer Valiant, which was stationed near Neptune, and she watched the alien ships take up positions with grim determination. Sarah was a veteran of the resource wars that had nearly torn Earth apart 40 years ago, and she had climbed through the ranks of the United Earth Defense Force through skill and courage, and now she commanded the entire human fleet. The problem was that her fleet was pitifully small compared to the Venatari force, because Earth had 23 warships in total, and most of them were designed for patrol duty and anti-piracy operations in the asteroid belt. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Venatari flagship, her communication officer said. Put it through, Sarah replied. The face that appeared on the screen was High Counselor Vexrath, and his expression was one of smug superiority. Admiral Okonkwo, I presume, and I am here to inform you that the Venatari Empire has established a blockade of your solar system, and all off-world colonies are now under our jurisdiction, and you will stand down your forces immediately. Sarah kept her face neutral. This is an act of war against Earth." Vexrath laughed, and it was a harsh sound. "War implies you have the ability to fight, and you do not, and your primitive vessels are no match for Council technology, and we have energy shields and weapons that can tear apart asteroids and faster than light travel." "Then why blockade us?" Sarah asked. "Why not just attack?" "Because the Council prefers civilized solutions," Vexrath said. "We will maintain this blockade until your government accepts vassalage, and your colonies will be denied supplies, and when your people begin to suffer, they will demand their leaders surrender." The transmission ended and Sarah turned to her senior officers. Analysis. Commander James Park pulled up tactical displays. Their ships are positioned to intercept any traffic between Earth and the outer colonies, and Mars colony has 3 months of supplies, and the asteroid mining stations have less, and Europa Research Station has maybe 6 weeks. "What about their capabilities?" Sarah asked. "From what our sensors can tell, their ships have some kind of energy shielding that deflects conventional weapons, and their main weapons appear to be directed energy beams, and they are faster and more maneuverable than our ships." Sarah sat down in her command chair. "So we cannot outgun them, and we cannot outrun them." "No, ma'am," James said quietly. Sarah was silent for a long moment, and then she smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "Then we do not fight them the way they expect, and get me a secure line to Earth Defense Command." Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah coordinated with every human installation in the solar system, and she pulled in favors and called up reserves and implemented a plan that most of her officers thought was insane. The asteroid belt became the focus of the operation because there were thousands of automated mining drones working in the belt, and each one was equipped with thrusters and basic navigation systems. Sarah's chief engineer, Lieutenant Maria Santos, came up with a modification that took only 18 hours to implement on each drone. They removed the mining equipment and replaced it with a simple kinetic warhead and added radar reflectors to make each drone look larger on sensors. "They are basically flying bombs," Maria explained. "No guidance system beyond basic navigation, and no shields and no defenses. But there are 3,000 of them." Meanwhile, other teams worked on converting civilian transport ships into electronic warfare platforms, and they could not match Venatari technology, but they could create noise and confusion on sensors. The Venatari grew impatient with the blockade because 2 weeks had passed and Earth had not surrendered, and in fact the human ships had withdrawn further into the solar system. Venatari patrol squadron of 5 ships moved deeper into the asteroid belt to investigate what appeared to be a convoy of human civilian ships heading toward Mars. Commander Dexval led the squadron, and he was confident this would be an easy intercept. "Human vessels, you are in violation of the blockade, and power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." The human ships did not respond, and instead they accelerated toward Mars. Dexval was annoyed. "Fire a warning shot across their bow." One of the Venatari destroyers fired an energy beam that passed within meters of the lead human ship, and still they did not stop. "These primitives are stupider than I thought," Dexval muttered. "All ships close in and disable their engines." As the Venatari ships moved closer, the human vessels suddenly activated electronic warfare systems, and Dexval's sensors went haywire, with dozens of phantom contacts appearing in all directions. "What is happening?" Dexval demanded. "Sir, we are detecting multiple radar signatures, and I count 50 and no 60 contacts surrounding US. "Impossible," Dexval said. "Scan for actual mass readings." Before his sensor officer could respond, the asteroids around them came alive with light because hidden in hollowed-out rocks were nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers, and they all fired simultaneously. Venatari shields were designed to stop energy weapons fired from a distance, but these weapons were hidden within a few kilometers and fired at point blank. Range 3 Venatari destroyers were hit before their shields could even activate in Dexval watched in horror as one ship's hull was punctured in 17 places, and atmosphere vented into space. Invasive maneuvers, he screamed, but his remaining ships were surrounded by those mining drones that now activated their thrusters and accelerated toward the Venatari vessels. The drones were destroyed easily by defensive fire, but there were hundreds of them, and they kept coming, and the Venatari ships were forced to waste ammunition and energy on the swarm. In the chaos, the human civilian ships had escaped, and Nexval was left with 3 crippled destroyers and 2 damaged escorts. Back on the bridge of the valiant Sarah watched the sensor readings and allowed herself a small smile. First blood to us, and send a message to all stations and tell them the Venatari can bleed. Across the solar system, human colonists and military personnel received the news, and morale soared because the aliens were not invincible after all. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning, because she had bloodied the Venatari nose, and now they would come with everything they had on Council Station. Prime High Counselor Vexroth received the report of the ambush, and his rage was terrible to behold. They used weapons we banned 800 years ago as barbaric, and they fight without honor. Another counselor, a being made of crystalline structures, spoke carefully. Perhaps we underestimated them. Underestimated, Vexrath snarled. They are primitives with crude weapons, and they got lucky. But I will show them what real power looks like. He sent orders to the Venatari home fleet. Send reinforcements and bring world-breaker weapons. But what Vexrath did not understand was that humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. And they had learned one crucial lesson. Honor is for peacetime, and war is about survival. And humanity was very, very good at survival on Mars Colony. Commander Lisa Jang addressed her people as they watched the supply countdown tick lower. We have bought ourselves some time, but the Venatari will return stronger, and we need to hold out until Earth can figure out how to beat them. Young colonist asked, can we beat them? Lisa thought about Admiral Concour's message and the destroyed Venatari ships. Yes, and because we fight dirty, and we fight smart, and we never surrender. The colonists cheered, but Lisa knew the real battle was yet to come, because the Venatari had barely committed a fraction of their forces, and somewhere in the depths of space, the Venatari reinforcement fleet was accelerating toward Earth's solar system with orders to end this rebellion once and for all. The wreckage of the 3 Venatari destroyers floated in the asteroid belt, and they were a treasure trove of alien technology that humanity desperately needed. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto led a team of engineers and scientists who had been transported to the debris field under heavy guard, and their mission was simple: figure out how the alien technology worked and figure it out fast. Kenji was born on Mars Colony. I had spent his entire life studying theoretical physics, and now at age 42, he was staring at technology that should not exist according to everything he had learned. The power generation system alone is decades beyond our capabilities, he told his team. They are using some kind of controlled fusion reaction, but at an efficiency we cannot match. His assistant, Dr. Rachel Foster, was examining the remains of the shield generator. This is even more incredible, and they are manipulating electromagnetic fields in ways that should require massive amounts of energy. But somehow they make it look easy. But it was the FTL drive that captured Kenji's full attention, because faster than light travel had been humanity's dream for over a century, and here it was sitting in front of him, damaged but intact. The drive was a complex assembly of crystalline structures and exotic matter that seemed to fold space around it, and Kenji spent 3 days just scanning and analyzing before he dared to touch anything. I think I understand the basic principle, he finally announced to his team. They create a bubble of warped space-time around the ship, and the ship does not actually move faster than light, but space itself moves. Rachel frowned. That is similar to some of our theoretical models, but the energy requirements would be astronomical? Not if you use this. Kenji pointed to a component that looked like a crystal lattice. I think this stores energy in higher dimensional space and releases it in controlled bursts. And it is brilliant, but also incredibly dangerous over the next 4 weeks. Kenji's team worked around the clock to reverse engineer the FTL drive, and they built a prototype using human manufacturing techniques and materials that were not quite right, but close enough. The problem was that their version was unstable because the Venatari drives had safety systems and redundancies that took centuries to develop, and humanity was trying to skip all of that. When they tested the prototype on an unmanned probe, the results were mixed. Because the probe did achieve faster than light travel for approximately 4 seconds before the drive overloaded and the probe was destroyed. 40% success rate, Rachel said grimly. That means 6 out of 10 ships that use this drive will be destroyed. Kenji nodded. But 4 out of 10 will make it, and that is better than 0. The data was transmitted back to Earth Defense Command, and Admiral Okonkwo reviewed it with her senior staff. Hey, 40% survival rate is a suicide mission. Commander Park said. Sarah looked at the numbers. It is also our only chance to take the fight to the Venatari, because if we wait here behind our defenses, we will eventually lose, and they have more ships and more resources, and time is on their side. She pulled up a star chart showing the nearby systems. Intelligence reports indicate the Venatari have major shipyards in 3 systems within 20 light years, and they also have supply depots and fuel stations. You want to attack their infrastructure, Park said with growing understanding. Exactly, Sarah replied. We cannot match them in a straight fight, but we can hurt their ability to sustain this blockade, and if we destroy their shipyards, they cannot build replacements for the ships we destroy. But with a 40% survival rate, you are talking about losing more than half our strike force just getting there. Sarah's expression was hard. Then we need volunteers who understand the risks. The call went out across Earth and the colonies for volunteers for a classified mission with high casualty rates, and the response was overwhelming because over 2,000 people applied within the first day. Sarah personally interviewed the final candidates, and she was struck by their determination, because these were not glory seekers or fanatics, but ordinary people who understood that desperate times required desperate measures. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was a shuttle pilot from Luna. My family is on Europa Research Station Admiral, and they have 3 weeks of supplies left, and if this mission can help break the blockade, then I am in. Captain Diana Okafor commanded a mining ship in the belt. I have been flying in this system for 20 years, ma'am, and I know every rock and every current, and these alien bastards do not get to tell us where we can and cannot go. Sarah selected 15 crews for the mission, and they were given the newly constructed ships equipped with the unstable FTL drives. And she designated the operation as Hammer. The ships were loaded with every weapon Earth could spare, including nuclear missiles and kinetic penetrators and even chemical explosives, because if the Venatari thought human weapons were primitive, then humans would show them just how destructive primitive could be. Night before the mission, Sarah addressed the crews in person. You all know the odds, and you know that some of you will not make it to the target, but those who do will strike. A blow that the Venatari will never forget, and you will show the galaxy that humanity does not surrender. The crews cheered, and Sarah felt a weight on her shoulders, because she was sending these people to their probable deaths. Operation Hammer launched at 0400 hours Earth time, and 15 ships activated their FTL drives simultaneously, and 9 ships made successful jumps, and 6 were destroyed instantly as their drives catastrophically failed. Sarah watched the sensor readings and forced herself not to look away, because she owed it to those crews to witness their sacrifice. The 9 surviving ships emerged in 3 different Venatari systems, and they immediately went to full combat alert. In the Vex Core system, 3 human ships appeared near a massive shipyard that was constructing new Venatari warships, and Captain Diana Okafor commanded the lead ship. "All weapons free," she ordered. "Hit them with everything we have." The human ships launched their full payload of missiles, and the Venatari were caught completely off guard because no one had ever attacked a Council shipyard before, and their defenses were minimal nuclear. Explosions bloomed against the shipyard's hull, and construction bays were torn open to vacuum, and half-finished warships tumbled away into space Venatari defensive platforms. Finally came online and returned fire, but the human ships were already accelerating away, and one was destroyed, but two escaped back into FDLIN, the Lexinal System 4. Human ships attacked a fuel depot that supplied the blockade fleet, and they used kinetic penetrators that punched through storage tanks and millions of liters. A fuel ignited in a spectacular explosion. Lieutenant Webb's ship took a direct hit from a Venatari defense laser, and his crew was killed instantly, but his sacrifice allowed the other three ships to complete their attack and escape. The final two human ships struck at a supply depot in the Korvax system, and they deployed boarding parties of human marines in powered armor. The Venatari garrison had never experienced close-quarters combat before, because Council species fought with shields and energy weapons at a distance, and they were unprepared for humans with assault rifles and grenades and combat knives. The human marines fought with a ferocity that terrified the Venatari because they did not retreat and they did not surrender, and they completed their mission to destroy the depot's main reactor before evacuating. When the surviving ships returned to Earth, Sarah counted the cost. 9 ships launched and 4 returned, and over 200 crew members dead. But the damage they inflicted was catastrophic for the Venatari because 2 shipyards destroyed and 1 fuel depot obliterated, and 1 supply depot crippled on Council Station. Prime emergency sessions were called, and High Counselor Vexroth faced angry questions from other species. "How did primitives destroy our installations?" demanded a crystalline representative. "Why were our defenses so inadequate?" asked a floating jellyfish. Buying Vexrath had no good answers because in 800 years no species had ever struck back at the Council, and their defenses were designed to deter other Council members, not desperate humans willing to die for their cause. And across Council space, whispers began to spread that maybe the Venatari were not as powerful as they claimed, and maybe the humans were not as primitive as everyone thought. The success of Operation Hammer sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council, and for the first time in centuries, the carefully maintained political balance began to shift. The Dexian Collective was a species that resembled bipedal wolves with silver fur, and they had been members of the Council for over 1,000 years, but they had always resented the Venatari Empire's dominance. Ambassador Crixal of the Dexian Collective watched the emergency council session with keen interest as Vexrath tried to explain how human primitives had destroyed multiple Venatari installations. "This is unacceptable," Vexroth roared. "I demand the Council authorize the full fleet to crush Earth, and these humans must be made an example of." But several species were now asking uncomfortable questions, because if the mighty Venatari could not handle one primitive world, what did that say about Council security? Crixel saw an opportunity, and he made a decision that would change everything. Because he sent a private encrypted message to a dead-drop location in deep space where he knew human intelligence was monitoring. The message was simple: "The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and I have information you need, and I want to talk." 3 days later, Ambassador Marcus Chen sat in a secret meeting aboard a neutral freighter in an uncharted system, and across from him sat Crixel. "Why should I trust you?" Marcus asked. Crixel's looping features showed what might have been a smile. "Because I want the same thing you want, and the Venatari brought down a Pegger 3, and they have dominated the Council for too long. What can you offer us?" "Intelligence," Crixel said. "Tactical data on Venatari fleet positions and supply routes, and weakness in their defenses, and also political information about which Council members are unhappy with this war. Marcus considered carefully. And what do you want in return? When this is over and when Earth inevitably joins the Council, because you will. And I want favorable trade agreements, and I want the Dexian Collective to have access to human innovation and creativity. You think we will win? Marcus said. I think you already are winning, Crixel replied. Not militarily, but politically. And you have exposed the Venatari as fallible, and that changes everything. The meeting lasted 4 hours, and by the end, Marcus had detailed information about Venatari fleet deployments and supply chains, and most importantly, he learned that 6 other Council species were quietly opposed to the war. Meanwhile, on Luna, Dr. Kenji Yamamoto's team had made another breakthrough because they had been studying the Venatari FTL drives and trying to understand why the human versions were so unstable. The problem is we were trying to copy their design exactly, Kenji explained to his team. But our materials and power systems are different, and we need to adapt the design to work with human technology. Rachel Foster had been running simulations. What if we used a different field configuration, and the Venatari use a symmetric bubble? But what if we used an asymmetric design? Kenji frowned. That violates their engineering doctrine, and all Council species use symmetric fields. But we are not a Council species, Rachel pointed out, and we do not have to follow their rules. They spent 2 weeks testing the new design, and the results were remarkable because the asymmetric field was actually more stable than the Venatari version, and it was also faster, though it consumed more energy. This is incredible, Kenji said as he reviewed the data. We have not just copied their technology, and we have improved it. The new FDL drive design was immediately sent to Earth shipyards and production began on a new class of warship designated Retribution-class destroyers. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo watched the first Retribution-class ship take shape and orbit around Earth, and she felt hope for the first time in months because this ship was faster than anything the Venatari had, and it was armed with both human and reverse-engineered alien weapons. But the political situation was moving faster than the military one because across Council spacecrafts were appearing in the united front against Earth. The Venatari Emperor, Zexter, was a being of immense pride and arrogance, and he had ruled the Venatari Empire for 2 centuries, and he was not accustomed to failure. I want authorization to use planet-killer weapons against Earth, he demanded at an emergency council session. The chamber fell silent, and several species made sounds of shock and horror. Crixel stood up. This is madness, and planet killers have been banned by council law for 500 years. The humans are a threat to galactic stability, Zexter argued. They must be eliminated. A Tarina, being that looked like a floating brain in a containment field, spoke. If we authorize planet killers against one world, where does it stop, and what prevents any council member from using them against rivals? I agree, said a crystalline ambassador. This sets a dangerous precedent. The vote was called, and Zexter was stunned when 12 species voted against authorizing planet-killer weapons, and only 8 voted in favor, and the rest abstained. It was a humiliating defeat for the Venatari Empire, and Zexter stormed out of the council chamber and raged back on Earth. Ambassador Chun received regular updates from Crixel about the shifting political landscape, and he saw an opportunity to change the entire dynamic of the conflict. We need to make a public statement, he told Admiral Okonkwo and the President of Earth. We need to speak directly to the galactic community. They composed a message carefully, and Marcus recorded it in a simple room with just an Earth flag behind him. People of the galaxy, he began. Humanity did not seek this conflict, and we came to the Galactic Council in peace and friendship, and we were met with demands for our submission. And we were told to surrender our freedom or face destruction. We chose freedom, and we will always choose freedom, and we do not seek to conquer or dominate. And we seek only to chart our own destiny as a sovereign species. We call upon the reasonable members of the Galactic Council to recognize that the current situation is unjust, and Earth is willing to join the galactic community, but only as equals, not as vassals. The message was broadcast across Council space using captured Venatari communication systems, and it reached billions of beings on hundreds of worlds. The response was mixed, but significant, because public opinion in many council species began to shift, and questions were being asked about why the council was waging war on a species that only wanted freedom. The Venatari tried to suppress the message, but it had already spread too far, and several council species formally requested a debate on Earth status. Meanwhile, the first squadron of Retribution-class destroyers completed their trials, and Admiral Okonkwo prepared for a bold move that would demonstrate Earth's new capabilities. She selected the UDS Defiance as her flagship and gathered the 7 completed Retribution-class ships plus 15 older human warships. "We are going to end this blockade," she told her fleet commanders, "and we are going to do it in a way that sends a message to the entire galaxy." The plan was audacious because the human fleet would jump directly to the Venatari blockade fleet and engage them in open combat, and this time they would fight ship to ship with their new technology on the day of the battle. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked at her crew. "Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is capable of, and today we prove that we deserve our place among the stars." The fleet jumped, and when they emerged near Neptune, the Venatari were caught off guard because the human ships were faster and more maneuverable than they expected. The battle was fierce and brutal because human ships used tactics that the Venatari could not predict, and they concentrated fire on single targets and used the asteroid belt for cover and employed electronic warfare that disrupted Venatari coordination. The Defiance lived up to its name as Sarah commanded it through the heart of the Venatari formation, and her crew worked with precision and discipline. Born of desperation, when the battle ended 5 hours later, the Venatari blockade fleet was in retreat, and they had lost 8 ships and 13 more were damaged, and the human fleet had lost 3 ships but had won a decisive victory. The blockade was broken and supplies could reach the colonies again, and across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Because Earth had not just survived, but had defeated a Venatari fleet in open combat. The political implications were enormous, because if Earth could do this, what other assumptions about council power were wrong? The victory at Neptune changed everything, and the impossible had happened, because a primitive species had defeated a council fleet in open combat. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo did not waste time celebrating, because she knew that military victory meant nothing without political follow-through, and she sent an urgent message to Ambassador Chun. "The window is open," she said. "We need to act now before the Venatari can regroup." Marcus understood immediately, because the galaxy was watching, and Earth needed to demonstrate that they were not conquerors, but potential partners. But first, they needed to make one final demonstration of capability, because talk was cheap and action spoke louder across the stars. Sarah proposed a plan that was so audacious that even her own officers thought she had lost her mind. "We are going to Council Station Prime." Commander Park stared at her. "And Merrill, that is suicide, and the station is defended by over 100 warships from multiple species. We are not going to attack," Sarah explained. "We are going to visit, and we are going to show them that we can reach anywhere in Council space, and that we have the capability to strike, but we choose not to." The plan was refined over 48 hours, and Earth's new fleet of 12 Retribution-class destroyers would make a coordinated jump directly to Council Station Prime, and they would arrive with weapons cold but shields up, and they would deliver Ambassador Chun to the Council chamber. The risks were enormous, because any trigger-happy Council fleet could open fire and start a massacre. But Sarah was betting that the political situation had shifted enough that no one would dare on the appointed day. The human fleet gathered in orbit around Earth, and Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance with Marcus beside her. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, and Marcus smiled grimly. "I have been ready since the day they tried to make us surrender." The fleet jumped, and when they emerged in the space around Council Station Prime, the effect was electric because alarms blared across the station and dozens of ships scrambled to intercept, but the human fleet held position exactly 10,000 kilometers from the station, and they made no aggressive moves, and Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Sarah Okonkwo of the United Earth Defense Force, and we come in peace, and we request permission for Ambassador Chun to address the Galactic Council." Chaos erupted in the council chamber because some species demanded the humans be fired upon while others urged caution. Crixel of the Dexian Collective stood, and his voice carried authority. "They have not fired upon us, and they are clearly demonstrating capability without aggression. And I move that we allow their ambassador to speak." The vote was close, but it passed because too many species were curious about what the humans would say. Marcus took a shuttle from the Defiance to the station, and this time, when he walked through the corridors, he was flanked by human marines in powered armor, and they were not there to fight, but to make a statement about Earth's new status. The council chamber was packed, and every species had sent representatives to witness this historic moment. Marcus walked to the center of the chamber, and he looked around at the assembled aliens with calm confidence. 6 months ago, I stood in this chamber and I was told that Earth must submit or be destroyed, and I refused because humanity will never surrender its freedom. Since that day, we have fought and bled and died to defend our right to exist as a sovereign species, and we did not seek this war, but we have proven that we can wage it. Vex tried to interrupt, but Marcus raised his hand. "I am not finished, and you will hear what I have to say." The chamber fell silent because no one had ever spoken to him. "High Counselor that way. Earth's fleet is currently in position around this station," Marcus continued. "We have the capability to strike anywhere in Council space, and we have proven that we can defeat your fleets and destroy your infrastructure." Several species made sounds of alarm, but Marcus continued. "But we are not here to threaten, and we are here to offer a different path forward." He pulled out a document and held it up. "This is a proposal for a complete reformation of the Galactic Council Charter, and it includes provisions to prevent any species from being subjected to the treatment Earth received. And it establishes clear protocols for first contact, and it guarantees the sovereignty of all member species. Furthermore, Earth formally requests admission to the Galactic Council not as a vassal, but as a full and equal member." The chamber erupted in debate, and arguments broke out between species, and Vexra stood in rage. "This is outrageous," the Venatari High Counselor shouted. "You attack our ships and destroy our installations, and now you demand a seat at this council." Marcus turned to face him directly. "We defended ourselves against your aggression, and every action we took was in response to your attempt to enslave our species. And if you had offered us membership as equals from the beginning, none of this would have happened." Crixel stood again. "The human ambassador speaks truth, and the Venatari created this situation through their arrogance, and I formally second Earth's proposal for charter reformation and admission to the Council." One by one, other species began to stand and voice their support because the political winds had shifted and the Venatari Empire's reputation was in tatters. Emperor Zexther himself appeared via hologram, and his rage was terrible. "I will not accept this, and the Venatari Empire will go to war with anyone who supports these primitives." But his threat fell flat because a crystalline ambassador stood and said, "The Venatari Empire has already gone to war and has already lost, and perhaps it is time to accept that the galaxy is changing." The vote was called, and the tension in the chamber was unbearable because this would determine not just Earth's fate but the future structure of galactic civilization. When the results came in, 41 species voted in favor of Earth's admission and charter reformation, and only 6 voted against, including the Venatari and several abstained. It was done, and Earth was now a member of the Galactic Council, but there was still the matter of consequences for the Venatari Empire, and Marcus was not inclined to be merciful because they had tried to destroy humanity. The Venatari Empire must pay reparations for the damage caused to Earth's colonies, he stated, and they must be sanctioned for their unauthorized use of military force. Vexrath looked like he might attack Marcus physically, but Crixel intervened. The human proposal is reasonable, and the Venatari violated multiple council protocols in their blockade and attack. The council voted again, and this time the Venatari were formally sanctioned, and their voting power in the council was reduced, and they were ordered to pay substantial reparations to Earth Emperor Zexter severed the hologram connection in fury, and the Venatari delegation walked out of the chamber, but they were alone because no other species followed them 6 months after Earth's admission to the Galactic Council. The solar system was transformed because trade ships from dozens of species now moved freely through human space admiral Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched a Dexian merchant convoy arrive at Mars, and she allowed herself a rare smile. Her communication officer handed her a message from Crixel, and it read, "Admiral, your people fought like demons, and I hope we never have to find out what you are like as enemies again." Sarah composed a reply. "Ambassador Crixel, humanity prefers to make friends, and we have learned from thousands of years of our own history that cooperation is stronger than conquest. But we also learned to never forget who tried to put us in chains on Earth." Ambassador Marcus Chun attended the grand opening of the Galactic Cultural Exchange Center, and beings from across council space had come to experience human art and music and literature. As young crystalline student approached him. "Ambassador Chun, is it true that your species was almost destroyed when you first met the council?" Marcus looked at the student thoughtfully. "It is true, and we were given a choice between slavery and extinction, and we chose neither, and we chose freedom." "How did you win?" the student asked. Marcus smiled. "We won because we refused to fight the way they expected, and we innovated and adapted and never gave up. And those are very human traits." In the council chamber, the charter reformation was being implemented, and new protocols for first contact were established, and the power of individual empires to dominate smaller species was curtailed. Humanity had not just survived first contact, but had fundamentally altered the structure of galactic civilization. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto's team on Luna was now working with alien scientists from the Dexian Collective, and together they were developing new technologies that combined human innovation with alien knowledge. "This is what it should have been from the start," Kenji said to Rachel Foster. "Cooperation and mutual respect and shared progress." Rachel nodded. "But sometimes you have to fight for the right to cooperate as equals." Across human space, colonies were expanding again, and the Mars colony was thriving, and new settlements were being established on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Europa Research Station Commander Lisa Jiang sent a message to Admiral Okonkwo. "Admiral, we have Dexian scientists requesting to join our research team, and apparently they are interested in our approach to marine biology." Sarah laughed, because who would have thought that 6 months after nearly going to war, the galaxy would be so eager to work with humanity. But there were still challenges ahead, because the Venatari